To this now, a report by Naspers and Maestra has found that the digital platform economy could be a game changer for South Africa. The country's e-commerce is now seeing a major shift with the arrival of global giants like Amazon. Joining us to give us an insight on how we are likely to benefit from this transformative era is Craig Lubbe, who is the head of marketplace at Bob Group. Craig, thank you so much for joining us this evening and helping us end off our show on a positive note when we talk about a good contribution to our economy. Tell us more about the e-commerce landscape in South Africa.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I think it's an incredibly exciting time for e-commerce within South Africa, particularly with the recent interest that we've seen from the likes of some of the big international players, both in the US and in China. And to me, this speaks, I think, in a big way to the potential that these big companies see in the South African market. So we definitely know that there's still a long way to go for South Africa, and that speaks to a lot of potential in terms of e-commerce adoption. So definitely a very exciting space with some new entrants in the market, and also new ways of people paying and shopping online within South Africa.
And just tell us about that long way we have to go. It is a long way, but it is quite a financially fruitful long way to go as well, if the numbers are anything to go by. I mean, the projections are sitting at 91.4 billion rand to the South African economy by 2035. That is astounding.
That is astounding, and in fact, I mean that is still a small portion of the GDP, but that does still mean we have room to at least double and then still grow some more in terms of the e-commerce space. And so there definitely is some sort of tailwind, within this sector, and so businesses who adapt and adopt this as one of their channels definitely do have some help and some room to grow as they develop their businesses.
So, Craig, South Africans have, a shopping culture, going to the shops, touching the product, putting it in your trolley and standing in a queue, paying for that good or the service that's been provided to you. Are we moving slightly away from that now?
I think we're moving to a space where a bit of both actually applies. So there's definitely still a very important place for physical retail. And I think that all comes down to experience. You spoke about, seeing product, feeling and touching it and experiencing something around a brand. That is still incredibly important. But where e-commerce comes, it can actually augment that experience by creating a level of convenience. So, for example, you could shop in store and see a product, but maybe select a color that's not necessarily at that branch and have that product delivered to you. And so you can, completely the opposite, you could also have an online shopping experience and go and click and collect it in the store. And so these two worlds definitely do still complement each other. It just means that digital and the online space does have a more important or a larger role to play within the shopping experience.
And we've also seen international competitors also getting into the fore as well of the e-commerce industry too. Just from research as well, are you finding that South Africans are opting for local platforms or more your bigger international platforms?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of interest from international players. And, I think in some cases, it can seem quite daunting. You've got these big behemoths who have such strong brand recognition and, coming into these markets. But there are, in fact, very strong local e-commerce players within the market. And South Africans definitely know these players. So I think there's a bit of positive as well to the situation in that as these big players come into the market, we have in some way they legitimize this whole idea of shopping online, because people have seen this happen in the States, have seen people shop in China with these big brands, and now we can experience it too. And so I think many South Africans who maybe weren't necessarily quite ready to try this whole idea of shopping online are maybe being brought a little bit closer to that. At the same time, obviously, it does still pose some challenges for the local players. But I think the local players can definitely still operate in the space. There's still lots of room to grow, and local players can also leverage their local expertise and their niche product expertise, and they can definitely offer a level of service which international players can't necessarily offer without being physically present in the country.
Yeah, Craig, you also make mention of some of the challenges there, and before we delve into that, the local players that you speak of who can still operate in the space too, for somebody who's watching, who owns a business thinking, I mean, I've been wanting to venture out and have an online presence too. I also want to be a part of this economic growth and have more people buying my product online. What are the steps that are taken? Is it a costly thing to do as well?
Certainly not. And I think that's one of the exciting parts about e-commerce, is that maybe 20 years ago it was a totally different story, but right now I think what we recommend is that you find a product or a niche of products that you really are passionate about, because I think that is what differentiates you as a business, from a big box global player. Because if someone's looking, and I heard this example given just recently, someone's looking for photography equipment, they want to be able to talk to someone who can really guide them in their experience or in their journey to shopping for something. And so choose something that you're passionate about. But in terms of cost, there are many players. So there are marketplaces such as Bobshop that I work for. And you can literally just have access to your products, you list them on the platform, and these platforms take care of payment and help you facilitate delivery. So it's not all that costly as an upfront payment. Even launching your own website has become a lot more simple and straightforward. So there are many big platforms that you can make use of, and I think if you can read with a little bit of setup and a bit of research, you can get going fairly quickly and have access to companies that help you with payment services and companies that help you with logistics. And so all you really need to focus on is getting your website up and running, marketing that to customers, and then offering great service along the way.
Now, that sounds convenient. You touched a little bit that there are challenges, of course, like in anything. If you could just take us through some of them.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges, and we've spoken about Amazon launching into the space, these big players have really, really strong brand recognition. So I think that is really one of the big scary pieces, is that, before, for example, Amazon launched officially in South Africa, Amazon.com was one of the largest, one of the most visited sites in the country already. And so they were doing such a good job internationally that brand recognition is paying off in South Africa. And with that, you also have, with these large players, a lot of pressure on the merchants that take part in these big platforms to drive aggressive pricing strategies. And so I think other merchants who are operating in the space do sometimes find themselves in the space where they are really squashed for offering really good pricing to try and differentiate themselves from the others. And that's why we really recommend that you rather focus on things like really good service and expertise around a product that you understand. Because while some customers definitely do look for pricing, they can only do so much, and it can only last for so long. As your margins are eroded as a business. But you can offer really good communication and product expertise and consistent service. And that, we believe, is a much longer term benefit to you as a merchant, but also to your customers.
Craig, sounds very exciting indeed. Thank you so much for your time this evening.